Ladies and gentlemen, coming at you from the Motor Valley of Europe, Stuttgart, Germany, welcome to the Screens Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Seegers. Behind the console is Tom. And today I will be joined by Sebastian Kranz. He's a senior project manager at Bosch Engineering with a focus on project management for infotainment systems and near-range camera systems in sports and luxury vehicles. Mr. Kranz, thank you so much for being on the show.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is fun because we haven't done an in-person one yet. So you get to be the first in-studio guest of many. No pressure whatsoever. Like, you set the bar high.
At least for dress code.
Yes, we'll see the rest. So first things first, like, tell us a little bit about yourself. What inspired you to pursue your current career path?
I think I have always wanting to work in the automotive industry. Since I was a little kid, it was about cars for me, and I was always a fan of cars. I was staring through the window, watching the cars go by, and by the age of 4, I could name almost all of them. And I guess the path was preset. And later, when I was at school, I had a fable for math and physics and science, and that was already a good start. Mm-hmm. And I told my father at a certain point in time, okay, I want to drive a Porsche. Maybe I want to work for Porsche. And he said, okay, then you have to pick up with your grades a little bit, but technology is already good, so why not become an engineer? And that's what I did. I then went, after my school, I went to university, studied in Munich, mechanical engineering, and that's also very tightly connected to BMW and the automotive industry. Got an internship at BMW, and for some further years I was studying, and after some detours, let's say, I ended up working for Bosch as a project manager. Mm. And project management, it was never project management that was the first choice from myself. Well, because when you're a youngster, you want to be an engineer, you want to be someone who drives the car, who tests something, maybe the ESP, go into extreme driving situation and drift the car or something. That's at least the dream. That was it for me. And then with later time and with proceeding with my studies, I understood that being the very, very neat engineer and focusing on numbers and number crunching, that's not the one for me. I was always more in favor of talking to people, coordinating things, bringing people together. And that's when I understood, so I'm more of a generalist. And I somehow stumbled across the project management job. And so far, I've been doing this for 6 years now. Wow.
I mean, it's crazy what your day-to-day must look like, because I know Bosch has a lot of things that go on there. And your specific focus is on infotainment systems, near-range camera systems in sports and luxury vehicles. So I could imagine your day-to-day is kind of a little hectic. Does it just vary? Like, when you show up, is there always a specific thing you're looking to do that day, or is it several projects at once?
Well, in my role and with my background now, it's several projects at once. So it's also several customers at once. So normally when you start out as a project manager, it's one project, one customer, so that you can ease in a little bit. But when you grow older and get more experienced, they may give you more to work and the workload is amping up. But still, it's okay. And for the days being crazy, well, that depends. It's different from day to day. There are days where you start really in the morning right away with one meeting after another, and different meetings, different locations. You have the early meetings with China, with India, for example, and then later in the day you have meetings with more German colleagues, and not so much for me, but for my colleagues, they also have meetings with the US colleagues. They are normally rather in the afternoon, but still from my day-to-day, I try to get some work in between the meetings. Normally, what I say is 7 meetings are also a work day, but then you haven't done anything because you always take some tasks with you from a meeting, from a decent meeting at least.
Oh, of course,
and you need to follow up on this, and you have more phone calls and more tables to fill and more work to do. And these are the other days. Then, if you don't have that many meetings, you follow up on your tasks and try to prepare some results, try to prepare some decisions for your managers, and just to guide your team through the development process.
So you've done this for about 6 years at this point.
Yes.
So with as fast as like automotive technology has seemed to have gone in the last 6 years, where did you see it from when you started doing this and to where it is today? Like, what are some of the major advancements that you've kind of seen happen over your time managing all these projects?
Well, that depends on which part we're discussing here. If we're talking about the product part, then when I started my job there as a project manager, we still had gauges, actual gauges with dial plates and with pointers, like small motors driving those pointers. And then we quickly moved to full display solutions like some virtual cockpits, and now we're discussing panorama displays, and that's mainly what I've seen happening very, very fast in the last 6 years.
Isn't that crazy, right? Because when you were first given a car and a cell phone or whatever, what did everybody tell you? They were just, hey, don't use your phone while you're driving. And now everybody has like basically an iPad here, or the entire thing is screens. Like, do you think that that's for like a better thing, or do you think physical dials have their qualities that should come back?
My personal opinion is I like these physical dials. I like flip switches, like in the old Mustangs, where you have this loud click when you flip it. That's cool for me. But I also understand that the trends go into the other direction, to having all of these sleek surfaces. You can display whatever you like, and this is okay as well. And it's mainly my job to implement this and to work with this, of course. So I have to find a good in a certain way, and I do. But if I were to buy a car, I would also consider an older one with all the gauges and all the switches.
I find that this is the big struggle. Whenever we talk to somebody on the show, it's always people are working on designs and they're working on engineering, or they're working on cars for where they're going to be. Yet, if you're in the industry, you're typically our car guy. Like, you're someone who's used to that. So would you rather have like an old muscle car type of, like if you could have any car, like what would it be?
If I could have any car?
Any car from any era, anything.
I can't choose or pick just one car. If my first choice will always be a Porsche.
Always be.
Always. 911 GTS as a Targa version.
Why Porsche? Why is Porsche your favorite car?
Because Porsche is, as you can say, the perfection of German automotive engineering technology. It's so well made. There's so much love for the detail in it, and it's just made for going fast. And that's what is so fun about driving a car. It's of course, being safe in a car is very important, but the actual inspiration comes from going fast and going fast in a safe way. And I think the Porsche guys have been doing a very good job for centuries right now to making nice-looking cars, which are just superior in their technology. And maybe one sign for a car that is very well made is that the design does not need to change very much. If you overlay all of the silhouettes of the 911 model, it's stretched a little bit. There's one or two curves that have changed slightly in their curvature, but in essence, it's the very same car as in the 1960s. And that's, for me, a good sign. And
timeless, right?
It's timeless, yes. Yeah. And the experience of driving a car like this must be so inspiring.
It's like getting a really good suit. Like, I don't think suits have changed that much.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a good comparison, actually.
Yeah, they just work. That's it. We
But
had, yeah.
fitting to my previous answer, of course, some 67, 68 Mustang would also be very nice. Like for the guys who have seen Gone in 60 Seconds, Eleanor is
Yeah.
also very, very neat.
Yeah, I'm from the U.S. Everybody, I think it's required watching. Like at some point, they show it to you in school. Probably, I don't know. Maybe I just went to a bad school, or a great school. I don't know. Like it could be, but still, you're right. Like infotainment systems that are there, those are the future. And I think the way is how do you get infotainment systems to work for car guys? Like what would appeal to you when you're like, what would give you that same kind of feeling? You know what I mean? Like, is that the difficulty when it comes to like trying to figure out these kind of advancements in technology? How do we appease both technological people or like maybe the younger people that just want the screens with the, also doing that with the guys who really like to feel the physical knowledge of the old cars and the old gears and all of that stuff?
I think the gap between those guys or those types of guys you just mentioned is very, very big. And I'm not sure I have a good answer to this. For me, what would catch me the most, I guess, is something that is going into the direction of augmented reality, where I have no additional goggles on or anything. I just look through my windscreen and I see more information that is to the eye normally. Normally, I just look through the windshield, I see the street, I see other people on the road, I see other cars, and if there's some additional information, like in 100 meters you have to go there, or there's a stone already that will hit you. That's interesting for guys like me, I would say, really interested in driving, really interested in the material. But I also would say that it is for other people, if there's no big gap between what you do normally and what you do during driving. So not everybody's a car guy or a car girl. Some people are just not into that. And many people are running around with their smartphones in their hands or the eyes on the smartphone while walking through the city. And maybe this is how we have also come to the all display solutions here, because the displays are repeated, or the content of the display from your smartphone is repeated. You have these interfaces like Apple Carplay, you have Android Auto, that looks and feels the same when you enter your car, and makes people at ease, at least familiar. Because they know it. It's familiar, and they know how to deal with this.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I love the AR thing, by the way. I hadn't thought about that. And it's one of those cool things where you're driving and it's both cool for safety, but it might also show you kind of like the intensity of your car and things like this. What do you think about, I always ask these questions because it's such a hot topic. What is the role of like AI when it comes to like car development? Like, where do you see that going? Are you in a positive way, or?
Well, in a neutral way, actually. When you talk about AI, the first thing that comes to my mind is autonomous driving. And it was kind of interesting because when I studied in Munich, I had one professor that said, listen, guys, everybody's talking about autonomous driving, but I can tell you, this is not coming from the next 20 years. I definitely can tell you this is not, truly autonomous driving is not coming. And although we have seen some examples of partly or even more partly autonomous driving, we are not there yet. As far as I see, and the AI comes in when we have truly autonomous driving, because for me, the truly autonomous driving means you're sitting in a car, there's no steering wheel anymore. You're just sitting like in a bus or on your couch, and you're facing your partner just like we do right now, and you just have the computer drive you wherever you want. That is something that comes to my mind. And if all the people do it, you need artificial intelligence to pick the smart routes to avoid collisions. And that's where I see it coming in, but I think we're still a long way away from that. Not that long, not 200 years from now,
Yeah.
but still, it's still some way to go.
Yeah, I think people want it tomorrow. They're kind of
Yes, they think it's good to have it tomorrow, but I don't think they actually know what they then want or whether they really want it,
yeah,
because it means give away all of the control. And many people may think that is okay, but when you actually have to do it, it's different. Just be a passenger next to a race driver on the racetrack.
I'm a terrible passenger. In
Exactly,
normal
that's
cars.
the point. And you just give away that kind of control. You can't brake for yourself, and that already is one stage of giving away the control, and you need to be prepared for this. And I guess the first cars that will be truly autonomous, they shouldn't have any windows where you can look through, because you don't want to see what is going on there, what the computer is doing there.
No, I would just be holding onto the walls the whole time. Hopefully, they have a bunch of those like handles for me to grab. It's weird because it's almost like it feels like it's going to be like the airline industry. Like no one worries about flying their own plane. You just get into the plane. It takes you where you're going to go. It's a nice experience. Hopefully, most of the time it's probably not. If you're like long international flight and economy or something, then it's terrible. But not everybody. I'm sure there's nice ones, but there's some experience on airplanes where here's your own bed and your own TV and all of this, and it's a very comfortable thing. And you're never once thinking about I need to control this plane. No, it's just a relaxing thing.
Exactly.
Eventually, cars in vehicles when everything's fully autonomous should be geared towards that. Now we talked to somebody before that possibly was thinking about the future would be more niche when it comes to cars. Like there's people that are younger that might never want to own a car because that's the situation they're in, where they can call an Uber or a Lyft or one of these ride shares, or they can use public transportation, or they're going to have an autonomous vehicle, or they can rent a car, with an app. But then there's other people that really like the old muscle cars. They like to hear the sound of the engine. They want to own a car. And I forget who this was. I think it was Stefano Carminati, who we were speaking with, who does automotive design. And he was basically saying, yeah, design is going to be like that for the future. You have to design for specific groups, more narrow groups. Do you agree with that, do you think?
I would say yes. The tendency is into that direction, but I would like to put it up more diverse. So there are different people, there are different living situations. And now we're in Stuttgart. I just came from a long drive through Stuttgart, and it's driving in the city is never my cup of tea, to be honest. And if I were to live in a city like Stuttgart, I would think of getting rid of my car and renting one whenever I need it. But right now I'm living rather on the countryside, and living without any own car would really bother me, because then most of the times I would need to find an alternative, and public transport isn't that good. I'm not that flexible anymore. And so there is, I agree that there will be different groups or different targets that you have to do a design for, but I'm not sure that individual transport will be a niche by itself.
Yeah. I wonder. Yeah. It's so curious because we're in such a weird time where I think that there's environmental reasons why people necessarily don't own cars, but then there's other factors into it. Like you said, it could be where you live. You could live within a city, and public transportation makes more sense because traffic, parking, things like that. But if you did live in like one of these small villages outside, I feel like it's almost impossible to not have a car, So it's always going to be that. But as the future gets more autonomous, because it seems like everybody's going that way, right? Like it's not something where, maybe I should ask you that. Do you think the future is completely going to autonomous, or is it like a fad kind of thing? Is it just the thing that they're talking about, but, will never actually do?
I think we will have it to a certain degree with the fully autonomous, but I do not think that everybody will have it. There, especially if I look at the people living around me and seeing the different generations, seeing different opinions on driving, on cars in general, I don't think that everybody will be happy to drive fully autonomous or anything, because sometimes they just want to stick with what they have. And let's face it, you just need to be able to afford what is coming. And the first cars fully autonomous will not be cheap. Like nothing in the automotive industry, anything that is pioneer technology, it's never cheap, and you need a lot more market share to throw it out wide and to get cheaper. And as long as we have the situation that this is a very new thing, it's not for the broad market, I would assume.
Are there any challenges that you faced when, with your career, whenever you're, working with the development of multimedia image-based driver assistance systems or anything like that?
Now it does sound like a job.
It does, right? But yeah, what are some of the crazy things that maybe you've had to overcome? Like, I mean, there has to be always those situations where, projects have gone astray. You had to get them back on track. I don't know if you can get too many specifics there, but...
Well, of course, you always have these kind of situations. So maybe one situation that we had where we got into a delay of the timeline with... I could see it miles ahead that this is not going to end well here, because we had a request from a customer that was for a project with an SOP, as we say, the start of production, which is basically where we have to have everything ready and our product needs to be released, and they ramp up their car production. That's the SOP, and the SOP date was very close compared to what we usually do. So a normal and good and comfortable project situation is 2 to 3 years. Prior to SOP, we start the development, and in this case, it was 1 to 1.5 years, and it was really stressful. And we got this request already that late, and then we tried to make a good offer to the customer with good support, and then we went into negotiations, and this commercial alignment cost us again a couple of weeks, and we were even later in the line. And then I said, okay, we still have the same problem. We cannot meet that SOP date. So and we have lost a couple of weeks more. So what are we going to do? And then I tried to motivate the team, and the team was motivated. Then that's not an issue, and we did what we had to do. But in the end, the funny thing was we were close to going to SOP. It was not the timeline that they wanted us to do. It was the timeline that I initially calculated out. But funnily enough, it became 2020, and the world had gone into a different kind of crisis, and everybody was delaying his or her project. So it didn't matter anymore. But in the end, we were having a very stressful year, and then somehow we managed to do it all, and the customer was still very satisfied with us, because then after the new situation, we had it all on time, and they could deliver their car on time. And yeah, I was never having to deal with that. Before that, I think nobody had to deal with a situation like we had in 2020 and 2021. But yeah, it was a very interesting experience, and I think the ones who came out there are stronger now.
Have to be. That's crazy, because I don't. I guess it's a subject that we haven't really talked about on this show, but it's something crazy to think about. Like, the world changed overnight, and what kind of other challenges would you go through during that period? Like, did you have to completely rethink of the way that you do business or that you get projects done during that time?
Luckily, not completely rethink, but continue what we already started. So the big topic here is smart working, as we call it at Bosch. So it's coming from the everyday being in the office and being present for meetings kind of attitude to working from home, having more video conference calls and so on. So this was already done before 2020. That's clear because we are a very employee friendly and modern technology company, but still it was not that far spread as it is today. So this was something that was then rolled out very quickly because everybody said, okay, we are in lockdown, you stay at home, you all work from home. And then it became acceptable to do work from home for 5 days a week, which was normally not that acceptable. You could in circumstantial situations, but it was not that far spread. And right now, we have the opportunity to go back to the office, but we don't have to be there for 3 days a week, as in other companies maybe. We have the choice, and with that working from home and accepting that not everybody is present, the way of working in the team changed a little bit. Some older employees or some older managers would most probably say, "Oh, I lost control and the team is not performing as they used to be." But I think they're wrong because young people or younger people and employees in general have shown the spirit and that they want to contribute no matter where they are. And maybe it's even better if they're at home and can balance their work and life at home. They can contribute even better to the success of the company. And that's what most of us learned there. And now, as I said, the ones that came out of this crisis are now stronger with new experiences.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it must be difficult to manage teams throughout that, transition, because I'd imagine you were seeing people every day, that were working on these things, and you're trying to manage a project, and then in the middle of it, like completely different.
Well, that also depends because my project teams have always been quite diverse and quite spread over the world. So I have a part that is related more to production that is in Europe, but that is not in Germany. And part of the development is also spread in Europe. So we have the thought, or we have the how can I say, the prerequisites established already for international teams that are not sitting in one office. But what is a big part of my job as a project manager is talking to people, traveling somewhere, and getting a feel for how that other person is doing at the moment, and maybe sometimes getting some implicit information. Nothing that is put in writing normally, but just if you go to somebody with a cup of coffee now, let's have a chat one-on-one, and now you tell me what's really going on. These kind of talks have decreased in person, of course. You have the possibility to invite somebody for a call, for a video chat. This is always possible, but it's still something different than it used to be when you meet somebody just by accident in the lounge for a cup of coffee. So this is what really is missing now, or was missing for a long time. Now we can go back to the office and we can have that again. But still, I found out the hard way that this is missing. And of course, traveling. When we were on lockdown, we didn't do any business trips for unless we had a very, very good reason. And mostly just being the project manager isn't a very good reason to go on travels here and there. So something that was a big part of my life and was a fun part of my life just stopped for 2 years. And well, now it's back on and I'm happy about it.
Oh, good.
But coming back to that question regarding managing teams, I
Yes.
think the hardest part is when you get new team members, both for you as a team manager and for the new team member, because in the worst case, you hardly see anybody of your team for the first year, for example. And then how is it that you connect to these people? And in past times, you came to the office and your manager said, listen up, team, here, that's a new girl, that's a new guy, say hello and get acquainted, and that's it, you're part of the team. And maybe you have some team building events, and this is now only slowly coming back up, but with many people still working from home or from somewhere else, I don't know, this is still a bigger challenge than it used to be.
Yeah, I think whenever I got more business done, it was always, I'm not going to send an email. I'm going to walk to that person's desk and I'm just going to talk to them one-on-one.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's something that kind of is missing about that. But there is something to be said about the productivity that people seem to have while they are at home. And it sounds like what you're doing, you were already ready for this, because of the structure of the team and the company and everything. So worked out okay.
Yes, maybe some of the developers are now happy that the project managers work from home, because the project managers were the ones normally on the phone while the developers were trying to get focused and to get something done in the code. And every time when a project manager had an idea, he would walk up to the developer and say, hey, listen, I have an idea. Can you give me an answer to this question? And we, the project managers, then destroyed all of their focus and what they have just built up within the last 1.5 hours. So some of them are happy now.
Oh, bet. How do you balance the need for high-tech features with the ease of use for drivers? Did we already ask that? We kind of talked about this already, but...
Yeah, we have hit it a little bit. I think it's kind of tricky to balance this, actually, because coming from my very first project, where it was just an instrument cluster, just the gauges that are directly in front of you that you use while you're driving, it's there's not so much high tech that is really well to implement, because you need to have a good legibility. You are not to be distracted from your driving. That's the key thing here. And this is where these displays are good, because you can reduce the content that you're looking at. You can just give one big number, one big speed, for example, that is spread over the whole screen if you're just into that. But if you're choosing to use more information, then you can still beam it up. So it's you always have high priority requirements like legibility, safety, that you need to focus on, and the finesse, let's say, comes later.
That's a good word. The finesse. How do you think an infotainment system, how does that contribute to the overall driving experience of something like a sports car, for example? Well,
you can imagine in the past, when you had the mechanical gauges, it was pretty much preset what you can see there. Like you could see your revs, your speed, and maybe if your gas was gone, that's when you had some blinking light, and that was it. And right now you have much more information you can use. You can, for example, see what is playing on your radio at the moment, or as with sports and luxury cars, you can have some sort of racetrack assistant. You can beam up a G meter where you see when you go around corners how much side forces you do have, and that's kind of interesting for the ambition driver. And I like it when we are allowed to implement these functions, because they're really cool, and it's a nice thing, and it's really more individual what you can do. You can choose a new skin. So, for example, you don't like the color blue, then you switch it to green, and you still have the same information, and you feel much more at ease because your color is flexible and can be adapted to your needs. That's really cool thing.
That is cool. So you can personalize the driving experience.
Yes.
Yeah. So what are some technology that Bosch has in cars that people might not know about?
But it's hard to answer
Yeah.
how much tech it is, because it really varies from car to car. There are cars that are entirely Bosch free, which are, of course, not my favorite cars because they come from Bosch. But there are also cars that have a maximum Bosch footprint where they have all of the systems. And I understand the question, what kind of systems do we from Bosch deliver in the car that are maybe less known? The ABS is known, the airbags are known, I guess. Then now we have talked about the infotainment system, and we have also other domains. One big domain is driver assistance domain. All the radar systems, camera systems, parking systems are also made by Bosch, and of course not in every car, but they are in some cars. What else can we offer? We are big in the autonomous driving business already, so this is an emerging technology, of course, but we have some pilot projects which should be in current series already. And maybe what is really new, I think in the city of Stuttgart, there's one parking house which uses sensors of the car and sensors in the building itself that allow autonomous parking. It's called automatic valet parking.
That's really cool. So yeah, have you worked on any technologies that are pretty common in cars now?
Well, indeed I have. If you drive a modern car from a specific German brand.
Can't tell us.
Well, I don't really know if I'm allowed to do so, but
Gotcha.
I don't want it to be cut out, so just
Okay.
I don't mention the name, but in these modern cars, we have this full display infotainment solutions or virtual cockpits, let's say, and I've been part of that, developing this or leading the development in these cars. And I think right now, if you drive such a car of that brand, you can hardly go without buying this system, which is kind of interesting. And as you said before, I'm not only a project manager for infotainment systems, but also for camera systems. What is meant by this is these parking camera systems. So you may own a car that has a rear view camera that is also a possible product from us, but also the surround view systems. When you switch to reverse gear, and then many cameras come into light or into life, and you have a surround view. You can see what's left and right, and where's the curb, and do I hit anything? Where are the trees? This is also part of one of my projects that I recently concluded, not with a German car brand, but still it's something that we have done. And truth be told, you said before, I'm working for Bosch Engineering, and the concept of Bosch Engineering is we are part of Bosch, and we take the existing portfolio that is there with Bosch for the big customers, big in the sense of high volume customers, and we adapt this existing off-the-shelf technology as good as we can and give it to the low volume manufacturers. Sometimes they are part of a big group, or sometimes they are individual companies, but we're mostly doing off-the-shelf products, and we adapt this. So almost anything that we then sell to the smaller customers is already there with the bigger customers. You know, what I see as a trend now, especially coming from the infotainment side or from the ECU side, the electronic control unit side. What we have experienced in the past was we had an ECU for each small system. A modern car had up to 50 or more individual ECUs, and what we now see is that this is dramatically reduced to so-called domain controllers. So you open up a domain which is like driver assistance or infotainment or motion for the vehicle, and you just take more powerful ECUs and you condense it and you put more features on these powerful ECUs. And this is where I see the trend at the moment. There are already examples where this has been successfully done in the industry, and Bosch are now also jumping on that ship. And I think it's really interesting what we're going to do here in the next couple of years, because it's a big change in the mindset of car manufacturers as well, because in the past they focused very much on the individual systems, and now that we have fewer systems that we need to fit somewhere, the focus is more on the software. And you may have heard the term about software-defined vehicle. This is not just words; it's a thing that is coming up, and software gets more and more powerful, gets more and more dominant, and it's something that I really I'm interested to see where this is going. I have some ideas being involved in this, of course, and as Bosch Engineering, we are working in more than only one domain, more than only infotainment. So it's cool to be a part here for Bosch and see where we can go with this.
Yeah. Did you ever think when you were 4 years old looking out the windows at these cars that this is what you'd be doing?
No, I would have never dreamt of this. Of course, the imagination of a 4-year-old is on the one side is endless, but this specific detail I didn't imagine. So, but it's still really cool.
Yeah, especially since what vehicles have become. I mean, I'm not going to presume how old you are. I've definitely been around for a while, and cars from when I was 4 were so different than what they are now. And I feel like cars 10 years ago, just everything is just so rapidly developing. And what you're doing is kind of being at the forefront of that development, working on projects that kind of, are part of the future, which is got to be rewarding.
It kind of is, but I have the same moment as you from time to time, when I talk to one colleague and I said, listen, this guy I just met there, he drives this car, and I know that my colleague is involved with that car brand because he's a project manager for this car brand for a different product. And he said, oh, come on, that's an old hat. That's so old vehicle architecture. We have dropped this already 4 years ago. And I thought, okay, that's a high-priced car, and it's cool. If I were to drive that car, I would be really happy. But still, we sometimes are, as you say, at the forefront, and even we do not realize how fast we are going there with this.
How many years in the future do you live with a project? How far ahead are you thinking? I mean, you said the average thing is, 2 to 3 years, or is it much more or less?
No, it's just about that, actually. So when we initially make the plans, it's 2 to 3 years that we think ahead, or that was the case, actually, just until now. So you're right out. I'm a senior project manager now. So as a not senior project manager, you have the, let's say, normal projects, and now as a senior project manager, I'm allowed to move on a little bit, and we have now bigger projects coming up where we try to establish a product platform that is also there, not only for the next 2 years, but maybe where we derive some more products for the next 5 or 6 years maybe. So this is my time horizon now.
Mm-hmm. Do you find yourself needing to pivot a lot within those 2 to 3 years based on just how fast technology is moving or what the current trends are? Like maybe you started working on something and then you realize, no, society's gone a different way. We need to probably work this way.
Not so much actually, because for this we have a very specific product, and the customer requirements are not that dramatically changed over time. Of course, there are always changes. There are always different opinions on what we have done or how we have implemented the requirements that we were given. But still, it's not that, as you just said, society has moved on, and this is completely useless or completely obsolete what we have done there. That's luckily never happened so far.
So far.
Well, never say never.
Never say never. Okay, Sebastian Kranz, Senior Project Manager at Bosch Engineering. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's been a blast.